I'm going to ask you about your role a little bit. Okay. Good. We are going to start soon. And it looks like we are live. I'm just going to give it 2 seconds. There we go. Okay, welcome to our Insights Chat. As usual, I'm your host, Jolene Duplessis, and I'm from the Eiffel Corp Marketing Department. Today we have Chiro with us. She's our Customer Success Manager. But before we start, I'm just going to give a little bit of background on what we're talking about today. In today's chat, we delve into the intriguing world of LMS optimization. We know institutions are striving to create effective learning experiences and harness the full potential of their learning management systems, also known as the LMS. So obviously, out of that, the concept of LMS optimization has gained a great deal of importance. So today we speak to our Customer Success Manager, Chiro, who will share a bit more about the meaning of LMS optimization, its benefits for organization, as well as the key components involved, as well as the practical side of things. And hopefully after this one, we can do another one and delve a bit more into our administration training components. So before we start, Chiro, if we could maybe just share a bit more about your role as Customer Success Manager and just tell us a bit more about yourself. Thank you.
Hi, Jolene. Thank you. And hello to all of our viewers out there. It's great to be here joining the Insights Chats today. So yes, I'm Chiro, Customer Success Manager at Eiffel Corp. I work with DigiConver LMS, focusing on working with customers throughout their LMS journey, from implementation into all the different avenues that LMSs bring about in organizations, helping you really get the most out of your experience with Eiffel and the DigiConver team, and really helping customers be successful and adopt the LMS throughout their organization. So it's quite a lot that goes into it, but it's very much about deep diving into each customer's unique environment, understanding what their needs are, understanding their problems, and working with them to find solutions and ways to reach their e-learning goals.
Okay, Chiro, so for someone like me, who I understand what an LMS is, I understand what it's used for, but the whole concept of LMS optimization is, can be a bit foreign. So maybe you can just, in your simple terms, explain what do we mean when we say LMS optimization?
Sure. So, LMS optimization, it is, unique for every organization, and it is an ongoing process as well. So it's not really something you do once off, when you have an LMS and you're optimized. It's something that happens on an ongoing, in an ongoing way, and it's something you always revisit. So, if you're looking for a loose definition of what LMS optimization is, like I said, it's really the process of reviewing and enhancing the LMS, and that can really go into lots of different avenues. And it looks at, what types of problems or needs an organization is having and which areas are not currently being fulfilled by the LMS.
Okay, so I'm getting or understanding that it's a process and it's ongoing. Is it something all organizations should or want to actually optimize? Or is it, why, if you had to ask someone, why would they want to do this? Why would they want to go through this process?
Well, it has to do with where an organization is on their LMS journey. If you think of your journey with your LMS over time, at the beginning of your journey, there's an implementation step. And usually the implementation is done according to specific factors, that the institution or organization has defined that have influenced the decision making, that really shaped how the LMS turned out at that point in time. And that speaks to, how people use it, or what features and functionalities were required at that time. And as time goes on, those needs evolve, maybe the learning and teaching requirements evolve, the types of learners evolve, the delivery methods evolve, organizational structures evolve, all of those sorts of changes happen. And, through those types of shifts, we find the need for an optimization exercise to come into play. What also can drive an organization to look into optimization is also maybe a sense of a feeling of uncertainty about what they're doing, or maybe a dissatisfaction, in the technology that they're using. Which also speaks to the adoption, of the users who are using the LMS, and making sure that the LMS is actually serving those users, for example, teaching staff and students in getting what they want out of the LMS as a piece of software.
Yeah, so if I understand correctly, it's as in all things in life, things change and shift, and it grows, and it needs to grow with you, otherwise it doesn't fit you anymore. So almost like if you go through those ebbs and flows of gaining weight and needing new pants, but also then it's not just one aspect or one component of the LMS. It actually involves everyone that uses it. But I think it also needs maybe a bit of unpacking of what exactly does it entail. I mean, which components do you look at let's get into the practicals of these things, like what does it entail?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, it really is unique to each organization, what the optimization looks like, and, what areas are focused on. But I mean, we can, open up the floor, for some guiding areas now, just for the purposes of this discussion. So some of the areas I would look at, with clients when talking about optimization is, for one, system. So system optimization. So looking at the performance of your site, the security of your site. Is your site scalable? Is it meeting those needs from a scalability perspective? Are you having challenges with integration? Are you wanting more automation? And also questions around availability, come into that as well. So the system is one area that we'd look at. Another area would be around people and technology. So how are the people using the technology? And often LMS optimization isn't only about the software. It could be about how the software is being used. So it could be a case of upskilling. Maybe there's a training that's needed, around how to optimally use the LMS, or process optimization. So how are our processes built around what the software can do? Are they meeting our needs? And of course, in that same area, we have accessibility. Is our LMS meeting our accessibility needs? So, people are a really core and central reason to why organizations optimize and focus on in that process of optimization. Another area you might want to look at is around policy, specifically looking into monitoring and compliance. As higher education frameworks around Africa change and evolve, more and more we're seeing requirements coming about for LMS and what the LMS needs to do to serve the institution's monitoring and compliance needs. So things like reporting become important, as well as process in the LMS. So monitoring process and, data protection and those sorts of things. And then lastly, but not least, you have learning and teaching. So, I mean, that speaks to optimizing things around course design. So how teaching is happening in the LMS, is collaboration where you want it to be in the learning and teaching process? Are your courses engaging enough? Is the assessment meeting the criteria you've laid out? Are the tools, really suiting your needs, or are your teachers and lecturers feeling limited by the tools they have? And in that as well, you also have course lifecycle management. So are we effectively starting and ending our courses and reusing content and managing our enrollments around course design effectively? So really, those are just, some loose guiding areas that you might look at, when you're thinking about optimization. And I'd like to, to our viewers, watching today, if you can in the chat, post, what factors they would consider, as part of optimization in an LMS. It'd be really interesting to have those types of conversations with our viewers and to hear a bit more about what they're doing.
I think that's quite enlightening. I mean, certainly when you think of optimization, often you jump immediately to the idea of cost saving or costs. But if I understand correctly and I listen to what you're saying, it really is about every aspect of the LMS and using it more efficiently. And it's also about the end user and making sure students are successful in their courses. So it literally looks at everything. So if I have I have an LMS, or I'm an institutional organization. I have an LMS. I have students. I come to you and I ask you, I want to go through this process of LMS optimization. What would be the steps that I take? I know specifically that's something that is offered by your department and by Eiffel Corp. Yeah, what would this entail and how do I approach this?
So, I mean, the how question, it's very much tailored toward the organization and, focusing on what type of approach they're taking, because optimization, like I said, it's something ongoing. It's something that happens incrementally with any LMS organization who has an LMS. You're always looking at how the LMS is working and making little tweaks here and there. But, if you want to approach it in a more deliberate way as an exercise, definitely it's a more organized type of approach that you take. So there would be an analysis step. So to be a discovery analysis, understanding what it is exactly, all the issues, what types of areas do you want to focus on, so like those points I listed earlier, as an example, what types of areas are you finding challenging, or what type of institutional goals do you want to move forward to meet? And also, working to outline the criteria that this optimization is hoping to meet. It's always good, and we encourage our clients to set that criteria quite clearly at the beginning of the optimization process, just to manage all the stakeholder expectations. Because often in an optimization exercise, you have a lot of different stakeholders at different levels of the organization involved. And, to manage those expectations is really important, especially because an optimization exercise, especially a deliberate one, can be quite time consuming. So, I mean, after you've done that analysis step, we'd go into a planning step next. So looking at that analysis, unpacking it, understanding what type of plan can we put together to meet those needs, who needs to be involved, what types of costs are there, et cetera, and really unpacking that and putting it on a timeline, and everybody is on the same page. Then we'd execute, go about the execution process, whatever that might look like, and then ending off in a review. And that review, you always circle back to the review, because like I said, optimization is really something that is ongoing. It's somebody like myself who is a customer success manager. Success is about continual optimization of the tools that you're using and making sure they're meeting your needs. So that's really an ongoing step that I visit and revisit with the clients I work with, is that review step.
I think what makes me feel a bit more comfortable with this is if I hear how much is involved and involving so many people, is the way that it's approached is very piece by piece, piecemeal. It's not this overwhelming thing, because it can be a challenge if you're trying to look at everything as a whole, just not know where to start. It sounds like they're in good hands if there's someone guiding the process and focusing on areas that's important to the customer specifically, or to the institution, and taking it bit by bit rather than tackling it all at once, because that can be extremely daunting, and it can also, like you said, be time consuming and actually hamper other things that are going on a day-to-day basis. So it really is a very important step to take, I would say, to actually look at how you're using the LMS and optimizing it in all areas. Otherwise, it's not really being as effective as it can be. So one of the things that we know is that it's very important to do these things, but it's also important to understand how to use the LMS as a site administrator. And I think next time what we will do is we'll unpack a bit more on what our fundamental admin training entails to help this as well. I don't know if you've got any final inputs for today, Chiro. I think it's very obvious that, if a customer or an institution comes to you, that they're in good hands, and that you will help them focus on the areas that are important to them, and that you see would work for them in terms of optimization. Any last thoughts from your side, Chiro?
Yes. So, I mean, just to wrap up, my final thought would be, really the success of an optimization exercise is determined by the adoption and the people, that are involved in it. Ultimately, the technology is there to serve the people in an organization and make everyone's jobs and lives easier. ensuring that students are successfully, moving through their programs, meeting the outcomes, engaging, and getting all of those great student success experiences that, organizations strive to achieve. So yeah, really that would be, the ultimate goal and focus of it, and the determinator of the success.
I think that's great, a great way of putting it. It's always about finding the balance between technology and people, and understanding that even though it's a virtual learning environment, we are still working with people, and we have to make it work for everyone involved for it to be successful. So if you are interested, like Chiro said, in the LMS optimization process, please comment on this chat, or you can reach out to us via marketing@eiffelcorp.co.za. And you can inquire about the whole process. We will send you more information, and we'll easily put you in touch with Chiro if you've got any questions for her as well. So Chiro, we look forward to chatting with you in more detail about our fundamental admin training. Thank you so much for your time today, and just sharing your wisdom with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jolene. It's been great.